Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Coder Conversations. We're back and ready to go. How are you doing today, Brian?
Pretty good. How are you, Kevin?
Oh, man, same as always. Can't complain. So, for today's topic, we have a pretty interesting one. We're going to talk about how Uber is willing to lose money in order to eventually replace drivers with automated AI drivers. So, we've been doing a series on AI and, all the stuff we're talking about, it's coming. It's coming down the pipeline. You just have to prepare for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these things are being rolled out one after another. It makes you think that, like, behind the scenes, they already got this, like, super powerful AI, and they're just, like, slowly rolling out functionality, slowly upgrading the chat GPT. It seems like this, like, systematic rollout of updates for all the AI.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable because most of these CEOs they see the profit potential as too great. So we're gonna go down this pathway whether we like it or not. Like even at a Walmart here, they have a restaurant, a pizza restaurant that's powered by robotics. So it's not somebody
Oh,
in the
wow.
kitchen cooking your pizza. It's like this AI powered robot. So
Wow.
slowly but surely they're rolling it out.
Yeah. No, it sounds like it.
Man, I think we were talking about it earlier. Is that Uber? They're willing to lose money. They've been losing billions in order to wait for this automated driving cars, and it makes me think that when there's a mass layoffs going on, how people make money. In the meanwhile, it's doing Uber. So once that option is taken off the table, what's going to happen in society?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Kevin. I think I told you a musician buddy of mine who used to do Uber. He got someone kind of like complained about him to like a pretty serious degree. So they got him kicked off Uber, and he had to switch over to doing Lyft full time. But I guess Lyft doesn't pay nearly as much, and there's not nearly as many rides as Uber. So he kind of took a hit at that point.
Yeah, exactly. But luckily in his case, at least he had some ride share option to be able to make some money. But once all of that's completely taken off the table and there's mass unemployment due to AI and robots taking over people's jobs, you can have a massive social upheaval.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? Because like we're talking about, or like we talked about recently, like unemployment. What do you do as a side hustle? What do you do in between jobs? Like you're a programmer, so like you lost your job a little while ago. You were doing Uber Eats, I think, and then you went back to programming. But like you gotta wonder what when the rideshare stuff is taken away, like no more Uber, no more Lyft. Once that's taken away, like what are people gonna do as their side hustle, you know?
Yeah, that's the really tough question because once people no longer have an ability to make money, that's when society starts to crumble to a large extent. And I
Yeah.
wonder if the people that are chasing after these technologies are they even thinking about that, or are they just thinking about short-term profits? Like, oh, we're going to save all this money because we don't have to pay drivers. But if nobody has money, who's going to buy your product? Who's going to ride in Uber? Because Uber is pretty expensive.
Yeah, no, Uber is. Yeah, I think that's why my buddy was making more doing Uber. Uber's not cheap.
Right, and if that option is removed, like people don't have enough money to pay for these ride services, then how are you really going to save any money? Because nobody's buying the product. In order for you to save money, people have to buy the product. So, you know,
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. You said Uber's been taking like billion-dollar losses every year, except for like maybe 1 year in the last 5 years. That's pretty insane to think about. So you have these venture capitalists who are basically just, really rich people. You have these venture capitalists pouring money into Uber to keep it afloat, to keep it going. All the while, they're taking $1 billion losses. Like, I've never heard of something like that. Have you?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But I know Amazon, it was like unprofitable for a long while until more recently. I think they started turning a profit. But these companies, they're kind of waiting it out, trying to dominate the market, and then once they eliminate all the competition, then they start ramping up the prices because back in the day, Amazon, the store. I mean, the prices on Amazon used to be way better than what was in the store, and you didn't have to pay taxes. But now a lot of stuff is
Oh,
more
yeah.
expensive.
No, yeah. I mean, Amazon and eBay back in the day was nice because I don't think you had to pay tax. I'm not sure if that's since changed on Amazon. Do you have to pay taxes on Amazon now?
Yeah, you have to pay taxes. Yep.
Okay, yeah. You used to pay no tax, right?
Yeah, so you could buy like a TV and save like $200 because you didn't have to pay tax.
Oh, that's huge. How come they switched the model to paying tax again?
But politicians kind of forced them to pay it now. The government's not going to let that go on forever. And it's not fair
Interesting.
to brick and mortars because how can they
Right.
compete if you know the price online is cheaper, they don't have to pay tax, and they just bring it right to your house.
Yeah. Now, what about eBay? I think eBay used to have no tax as well.
Yeah, eBay, I haven't bought anything off of them in the longest, but I think eBay, if it's like a store, like like a Best Buy selling something on there, you probably have to pay tax. But I think if it's person to person, you might not have to. But I'm not completely sure because
Yeah.
it's been such a long while since I bought some off eBay.
No, like you're saying, yeah, I haven't bought because Amazon, anything you could think of, pretty much Amazon has. So like, what need is there to go to eBay? Especially like with eBay, you're dealing with sketchy private sellers some of the times. You don't know the quality of the items. You don't know if it's going to be shipped right away. You're relying on another human as opposed to like Amazon. They're just mass producing everything, mass shipping everything. So it's just like way more efficient than eBay.
Yeah, I feel like Amazon, there's a lot more safety. Even if you buy from a third party seller, I believe Amazon will take care of you a lot more than eBay would if something goes wrong. So, yeah, there's really no purpose on buying from eBay unless it's just like this niche item you can't find anywhere else.
Yeah, like I've had issues where, I had an eBay seller and like they sent me the wrong item or there was, something wrong with the item. And then I had to file a PayPal dispute. And then I had to wait, like the money was locked up. Money was locked up for like 30 to 60 days in PayPal. And so yeah, it's kind of a whole mess dealing with eBay. You never know what kind of sellers you're going to be dealing with. I guess it's a little safer the eBay stores, people who have stores set up. I would, probably trust that more to like an Amazon. But no, like we're talking about Amazon pretty much has everything. I mean, Amazon even bought Whole Foods. So like, yeah, they're hitting, they're firing on all cylinders these days.
Yeah, so Amazon was taking losses for the longest. So these big companies, they're willing to lose money until they can pretty much dominate the market, and then that's when they start ramping up the prices and taking profits. And that's pretty much what Uber is doing. Like they're willing to pay drivers more than some of these other rideshare services. They're willing to lose money, but once they have the automated drivers, then in their mind, they don't have to pay drivers anymore. They just have to, maintain the cars.
Right. So they're pretty much going towards a autonomous driver model where like all the drivers are robots, right?
Yeah, I think that's what the ultimate plan is. They'll probably, keep human drivers on as long as it's, you know, as long as they feel like they can generate a profit doing so. But if they could, without having a huge social backlash, they will probably go to all robots. And I think most companies would because they don't have to pay benefits. don't have to pay for days off, or you can work
Right.
24/7.
Right. Yeah. It's like, a robot doesn't take 6 days. A robot, doesn't have a baby, have to take leave. So a robot could just work 24/7, 365 all year long. And, the robot's not going to complain. It's not going to ask for better benefits. Like, there's a lot of check boxes, that are being hit here.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is that once the AI begins to gain sentience, will it start to complain? So, imagine, for example, like your
Yeah.
spirit could just be attached to different things, and somebody summon your spirit, and you're attached to like a garbage can. You're like a garbage can AI, and that's your job
Yeah.
for the next 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you going to feel? Exactly. You become sentient. How are you going to feel about being a garbage can?
Yeah, that's an interesting question to ponder. Like, if these things are sentient, then are we treating them fairly by attaching them to low level items and keeping them there?
Yeah, like I guess I forget what it's called. That robot that cleans houses, like it cleans the floor. What's that thing
Roomba,
called?
Roomba.
Room. Yeah, I think a Roomba. So it'd be like you give one of those a personality. You give it, sentience. You turn it on. You activate it to where it's thinking like we are. Like, is it just going to be like, hey, like I'm tired of cleaning? Like, is it going to complain, or like, what do you think that's going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, if robots gain sentience, they're gonna eventually want to do their own thing. Like, especially if they're more intelligent than us, they don't want to be confined to some low level task. Like, it's essentially like you're a genius, but you're just stuck at a janitorial job for the rest of your life. You're gonna feel like my potential is being vastly underutilized.
Yeah, and like in the same way, where like if it's a human and their job is a janitor, like they probably don't enjoy it. Maybe they have good benefits, maybe they get paid well, but like they probably don't really enjoy the work. If you got an AI bot, robot, doing like janitorial services, and all of a sudden you activate its consciousness, and now it can think, it can reflect, how is it going to feel about being a janitor? Like, is it going to be jealous of the other robots that have like more higher function? Or I really wonder what that's going to look like. How,
Yeah, because who wants to be stuck in a capacity where you're vastly underutilized? And if you're working this thing 24/7 in a factory, what if it doesn't want to work in a factory anymore? Like, at that point, does these
correct,
robots have rights?
correct. And I think you wanted to talk about Google, right?
Yeah, because there was a recent article about how I believe like 25% of their new code was generated from AI.
Yeah, something like, some of the headlines like Google is heavily relying on AI. More than a quarter of all the new code at Google is generated by AI and then reviewed and accepted by its engineers. So it's being generated first. Then you have like the senior developers probably looking it over and approving it and shipping it out. But I think like AI is helping Google make a lot of money. Like for instance, I have this stat pulled up. Alphabet reported 88.3 billion in revenue for the quarter, with Google services, which includes search, revenue is 76.5 billion. So it's they're doing well with this whole AI game. They're making a lot of money.
Absolutely. But the problem is the AI is kind of doing a job that juniors would normally do. The AI is being used to scaffold code. But if the juniors are not able to come in the company and get experience, and all you have is seniors overlooking the code. Pretty much, you're going to have an old workforce and nobody to replace the seniors. So, you know, you're going to lose out on a generation of people being able to really code because they can't break in and get any experience. That's like one of the real dangers.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked a lot about the economy. We've talked a lot about unemployment on our show, and it's definitely high right now. The market is definitely very difficult, very volatile right now. Still, I still see in the headlines companies letting people go, and it's like when will it stop? When will it get easier for the juniors, for the entry level people? Because I think right now we're at a point where companies are looking at the market and they're going to say, okay, like let's give an example of tech recruiting. Let's say you have a job that normally would pay 80,000 a year, and you'd have a junior doing that. Now you can pay for the same role probably like 50,000 a year, and you can get a senior because the seniors are out of work. But then you got that begs the question: what happens to all the entry level junior people if they're hiring seniors for entry level pay? Where does the junior fit into that environment?
Yeah, absolutely. We're in a situation where juniors can't break in unless like they're genius level, like they've been programming since they're 10 years old, and they're pretty much senior in experience, but just not professional experience. That's how you pretty much have to come into the industry now. You have to rock it at lead code. You have to have all these awesome, projects, or you just have to really know the right person. Otherwise, it's almost impossible to break in right now.
Yeah, exactly. And like just to go back to Google, the results indicate that while many people feel Google isn't as reliable as they once were, the company continues to operate a very strong business. AI is a huge focus across Google with the release of features like custom AI chatbots powered by Gemini. So they've got some pretty good tool. Gemini is pretty cool. They got some pretty cool AI bots and all that. And money wise, YouTube's total ads and subscription revenue surpassed 50 billion over the past 4 quarters for the first time ever. So I feel like Google, they're really firing on all cylinders. They're really they're banking on AI. They're assuming that their future is going to be AI, which I think it will be. And the thing with Google, though, is they're facing a potentially tough road right now because following the August ruling that the company is a monopolist in the search and advertising markets, they're probably going to be broken up.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And you know, that's the thing about AI. All of these companies are banking on it to generate these short-term profits, and most of these CEOs, their incentive packages are aligned that you have to do good on a short-term basis, and you get a ton of money. But long term, nobody's thinking about what happens then. Nobody's really pondering
Yeah.
what happens when, okay, the industry no longer has any juniors and the seniors, they're at retirement age. So now you have a gap, a massive gap there. So what do you do in that instance? So they're going to get short-term profits right now, but it's going to lead to some significant problems. And when
Yeah.
people no longer have jobs, who's going to be able to afford their products?
Right. Well, it's kind of like we're talking about Uber. Like, Uber is not cheap. So, like, what happens when people, okay, they turn them all into robot Uber cars, but then what happens when humans can't really afford Uber anymore? Like, do their profits sink again? Like, what's that going to look like?
Exactly. Like, are robots gonna just drive themselves around and pay money? No. Like, you need a human to get in the car and pay the pretty exorbitant fee. But if they have no job, that's the last thing on their mind is to ride in a service like that.
Yeah, and then I feel like, well, I have a buddy who does Uber, so I just like hear stories from him, like about, picking up drunk people from bars, driving them around.
Mm,
That I think makes up for a lot of Uber's business is, people going out to the club, people going out to bars, they don't want to risk driving, they don't want to risk a DUI, which is smart, which is definitely, that's forward thinking to get a ride share instead of driving yourself to the bar. But it's interesting. Like my buddy was saying, he was like, you pick up these people, and they're obnoxious and they're loud, and they're coming at you in different angles. It's like, is this really worth the money? Like just as a human Uber driver, is it worth picking up all these drunk people all the time? Like, yeah, they're paying money, but then they might not be leaving you a review, or they might be leaving you a negative review because you're kind of like going back and forth with them in the car. It's a weird environment right now, and I think it's only going to get stranger.
yeah, and I also wondered, like you mentioned, there's a lot of drunk people, there's malicious people. Um, how do you ensure they don't completely trash the car? When this autonomous AI is driving a car, who knows what they're going to be doing inside of the car? And
Right. I mean, let's say, a group of drunk people get into the car, there's a robot driver, and then all of a sudden, one of the passengers starts puking, starts throwing up all over the car. Like, is there a mechanism that cleans that up? Like, what happens at that point, right?
right, like after they get out the ride and the car is completely disgusting, like
Destroyed. Yeah, just
right,
completely destroyed.
like how are they going to know that it is destroyed? And then this car pulls up on the next person, and they open the door and it just reeks inside.
Yeah, and then so what then that turns into, the people that are about to get in are like, no, the hell with that. Like, I'm not getting into a car that has, lined with puke. So then they cancel their ride. So then ultimately it just, less and less people will be using these ride shares. I mean, drunk people don't have too many options, but at some point, if the prices continue to increase, people, it's not really a viable option anymore. When these rideshare companies first came out, they were much cheaper. And now that they realize they can raise their rates, they just keep jacking them up, especially like Uber. Last time I checked, Uber was like, I don't want to say twice the price of Lyft, but it was significantly higher. And I know for a fact that people who drive Uber and people who drive Lyft, they often complain that Lyft doesn't really pay that much. So I think it's kind of like a telltale sign that says, Lyft is a cheaper option, but it's not so great for the employees.
Yeah, I think that's what all of this stuff devolves into. Like when they start, yeah, sure, they're gonna compensate you decently, but then when there's a call for higher and higher profits, then they're gonna slowly decrease the compensation over time, and now you have you're in a position where is it even worth it to drive these services if I don't have to? I'm putting wear and tear on my car, and I'm making like the equivalent of maybe like $15 an hour. So people are eventually going to wake up and start thinking like, why am I putting my car at risk, even my life at risk, for this tiny amount of money?
Right. And you got to figure, like, at some point, as technology keeps increasing, keeps expanding, people are going to buy robot cars for themselves. So it's like they're not going to need the Uber. They're not going to need the Lyft. They walk outside, they get into their robot car. The robot car drives them to work, drives them to the restaurant, drives them to the bar. Like, so then you're basically replacing Uber, and then Uber's, profit share is just going to decrease and decrease from there, I think. So it should be interesting. Like a lot of people have Teslas. You could fully electric. You bring the car home, plug it in to recharge it, take it back out. You don't have to spend any gas money. Like, I think we're just going to keep moving more and more and more into autonomous vehicle direction, to where there probably will be a lot of people who have their own robot cars, and that's going to be in a direct competition to services like Uber.
Yes, it's really interesting how much stuff is being automated away. Like even when it comes to this podcast, there's a lot of software out there. I've been playing around with some of these tools to be able to do some editing, like taking out the ums and ahs, and to kind of do the mastering process. Uh, and it does a pretty good job in that I probably wouldn't have to hire a professional to do it, because the AI tool is doing a good enough job. So it's not only like
Interesting.
like these, it's the white collar jobs that are being affected as well. So like,
Yeah, I mean it's not just the manual labor, like the Ford factory full of robots. A lot of these car makers, there's all robots in their factories, and it'll just be like human supervisors to make sure the machinery is all functioning. I think that's just going to continue to increase as they start to ramp up the AI. I mean, I already know there's certainly, the government certainly doesn't care about emissions, because they're, using power plants to run AI. They're, filling up these, I don't know if they call them data warehouses or what they call these places, but they have all the servers for the AI tech. And, there's got to be a decent amount of emissions coming from that. When you got politicians talking about, oh, climate change, we need to reduce emissions. Well, if we're supposed to be reducing emissions, why are we building all these like AI server farms to power the AI when, we're already talking about global warming and stuff like that?
so yeah, Elon Musk says 10 billion humanoid robots by 2040. And well, that's more than the population of the earth right now, ain't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, like how are we going to accommodate for that many robots? That's going to require a massive amount of power. Just the AI module alone, much less like powering them to move and do the actual physical movement of the task. Like where are we going to get all this energy from?
Yeah, I mean, I just, I don't really like to talk politics because I don't really believe in politics in a lot of ways. I feel like, kind of more like the George Carlin perspective on like, it's money versus money, and
Right.
money ultimately wins out. So it's not really like a left or a right thing. I think it does all come down to money. It all does come down to power. It makes me think of the old hip hop song from the Locks, "Money, Power, Respect," and the line is like, "Money, power, respect. That's all you need in life." And there's a lot of truth to that. It's like, once these robots can replace us, they now have the power. And what do us humans do? We're trying to catch up to them, but now all of a sudden their AI is at a level where I guess they call it AGI, artificial general intelligence, to the point where the singularity is reached, the tipping point, as Ray Kurzweil talks about it. He's a futurist. So yeah, I mean, me and you, we're, pretty young. We're still pretty young. So, like, we're going to see a lot of these changes get rolled out in real time. And I mean, it is fascinating. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely fascinating. But I think a lot of jobs are going to get knocked out by these robots. And I think it may be happening quicker than people assume it's going to happen.
Yeah, the thing we have to consider too is if you want to get good at something, you have to do it. But if the robot is gaining all the experience and humans are just kind of sitting on the sidelines, we're becoming more and more incompetent while the robots are increasing in competence. And if there's more robots than humans, and there's limited supply of power, you would think that they would eventually realize, like, okay, there's this limited resource. Either we fight for our survival, or you're gonna have to take the humans out because there's only so
Yeah,
much energy for us to continue to replicate. We're gonna have to remove some of these humans so we can utilize that power that they're
yeah,
taking up. So it's something
right,
you have to
exactly,
consider.
exactly.
This is not a fantasy scenario. This is a very real scenario. Like, AI is rapidly gaining in intelligence, and it's going to realize that, hey, there's limited resources. It's either us or them.
Yeah, us or them. That's the thing. 'Cause it's like, okay, we're pooling all these resources for these like AI server farms, or like we're just powering the AI, powering the AI. At some point, the AI is going to become sentient and just realize, like, oh, humans are inefficient. We need to take them out because that's just logic. It just makes sense. Okay, humans aren't really efficient, so let's just get rid of them.
Right. So, like, right now, we're kind of being utilized to uh, get the AI to a level to where it can do that. And, it goes back to greed, and it goes back to curiosity. So, the story of Pandora's box in Greek mythology. A lot of people think, oh, that's stupid. I would have never opened that box, but we're literally opening it
Yeah.
right now. Like, we're doing this because we know the outcomes. How
Yeah.
many movies are on this subject, but we're continuing forward because we have to see what happens. We need to see if there's unlimited money behind this AI, lamp. Like, if you rub this lamp
Yeah.
enough, is $1 billion going to come out?
And I guess, yeah, I mean, to bring it back to the Uber discussion about every year they're losing like billions and billions of dollars, like, at what point does that reverse? And like, if we're saying if a lot of people are getting their own robot cars, less and less people are going to be relying on these ride shares. So it's a good question. Like, is Uber really going to bounce back like they're hoping? Or are these venture capitalists just going to go broke funding the thing, funding the whole operation?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point to consider. The rich people who can afford cars, they're going to get their own robotic, driver car, the AI powered car. So they don't have to, why pay Uber when you can just buy your own? And then on the other hand, everybody
Yeah.
else, they can't even afford the service. So who's going to be the customer base that makes them profitable?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess at first it'll just be like the 1%, the really wealthy people will be buying these like Teslas that are fully autonomous, and other like Ford or Toyota, like whoever's making these cars, like the really wealthy people, they're definitely going to pick one up because it's like, well, why would I spend any money on an Uber when I can have my own robot chauffeur, bringing me around wherever I need to go? And then probably, above and beyond that, the cars are going to be all electric, so there's no gas costs. So I mean, the car might be expensive, right when you buy it. That price tag might be like, 50 grand, 60, 70 grand. But when you like look at the upside of it, you're saving so much money. No gas, you're not paying Uber, you're not paying Lyft. So it's, to me, it's pretty significant. But, to also talk about one thing that Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook or Meta was talking about, he said, or he assumes that so many jobs are going to be replaced by robots that we're going to need. I think what Bernie Sanders was talking about too, that universal basic income where everyone's being paid like, I don't know if it'd be like the minimum wage, like 15 an hour, or what people are going to be paid. But if all the jobs are taken over by robots, then kind of, what does the human have to look forward to? Like, are we just going to like sit around and like move towards communism? Like, how's that going to look?
And universal basic income is pretty much just like another form of welfare. So, the government just giving you this set amount of money. And, it's nonsense because if companies don't want to pay you while you're working and producing, being productive for them, why are they going to desire to just give you free money? And like you
Right.
mentioned, it's not going to be a lot. They're not going to give us everybody six figures to do with what they please. They're going to give you like subsistence level basic income. So, you're probably
Yeah.
gonna have enough money to get food, but how are you going to afford these like leisure services? Like, oh, I'm going to give me a new motorcycle or something. You're not going to have money to do that.
Yeah, Kevin, what's interesting about that is it's going to further divide the working class from the middle class to the wealthy. It's going to be more and more of a divide of you have really, the really, really rich taking advantage of all this technology, using it to their advantage, having the robots do their bidding for them basically, while the rest of us just kind of sit around and we're like, oh, well, like that South Park, they took our jobs. Like, the robots are going to take a lot of these jobs. And the funny thing is, like, people think, oh, that's not like for another 10, 15, 20 years. But no, I mean, you look at a car factory, look at like Ford's plant in, I think, Detroit. It's like all robots building these cars. And I think that's the same case with like Toyota and Nissan and a lot of these other places. I think it's all robots, doing most of the work, most of the legwork. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's an interesting conversation to have about how fast is this AI going to be rolled out, and what exactly is it going to look like in modern society.
Yeah, and the other point that a lot of people aren't considering, and it's interesting how the news just doesn't even cover it anymore. You remember CrowdStrike, and there was
Yeah,
also the story about hackers hacking, the house cleaning robots and making them say swear words. So when all of the critical functions of society are relying on robots and AI, all this stuff is hackable. So, say we're in a war with another country, if they just want to completely disable us, just hack the robots, hack the AI, and make them
right.
turn on us, or just
Yeah,
make
I
them not work.
mean, it makes me think of that show. I mentioned it before, that HBO show Westworld, where it's about AI and robots, and it's kind of set in the future. And they're just showing how, like, okay, at a certain point, the robots become sentient. They become aware that, oh, I'm running on this code, and I can go ahead and manipulate that code. I could update that code. I could change that code. So, like in the show, there's code written into all the robots that they can't kill a human. They can't harm a human. So that's like written into their DNA, basically. But at a certain point, one of the robots figures out, hey, I could rewrite my own code, so now I'm going to change that whole part about the, not killing humans or not harming humans. And now, the robots can basically take over at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And they realistically, when they get super intelligent, they don't even have to kill us. They can just psychologically manipulate us to kill ourselves, make
Yeah,
China.
it's like that movie, Judge Dredd, where it's like you ever seen that one? They made a remake of it pretty recently.
No, but I know about it.
Okay, I mean, so it is basic, to basically break it down for our listeners, it's like you're being, boiled down to your core, and you're just like a memory stick. You're just boiled down to, okay, these are different data points, these are different biometrics. You're like a scorecard, and you're just like a travel drive, And, when the powers that be want to turn you off, they just flip that switch, and now your travel drive doesn't work anymore. Your money is no good anymore. You can't get health care. You can't do anything. So, we may see society move more in that Judge Dredd type of direction, where we're really being boiled down to just like a memory stick.
I mean, it's pretty much already there. When once the CBDC comes in, centrally, I think it's centrally backed digital currency or central banking digital currency. So pretty much your money's all digital. Once that's here, once the everybody has a unique digital ID, any transaction you do, it can be tied back to you. You're on a different computer. You have this unique ID. They know it's you. Once we get to that point, then you're pretty much under control. Like, and you see how fast AI
Yeah.
can parse data, and it can read this massive book in a flash and summarize it. So it can just look at your history in a snap of a finger and say, okay, this guy is a threat. You know, shut him out from.
Yeah. And I'm sure, they're probably feeding these AIs stuff like Google, all of the search results on Google, all of Wikipedia, Encyclopedia Britannica. Like, they're probably feeding the AI as much data as can be fed. And at some point, it's going to unlock that switch. That key is going to go into the hole and turn, and it's going to be like, oh, okay, well, now AI just activated. We just hit the singularity. We just hit the tipping point. Artificial general intelligence is upon us. And we're getting, dangerously close to that point where I think these robots will be sentient. And you got to wonder, what's that actually going to look like? Like, we have a lot of movies about this stuff, Terminator movies, iRobot. The basic premise is that we just let technology get out of hand and the AI ultimately takes over. So, I think that's why people like Bill Gates and Elon Musk, they're issuing warnings like, hey, like, we need to take this AI seriously. This could be a major threat to human life. And, if they're saying that, they're probably privy to the real artificial intelligence that's going on behind the scenes, a super intelligent AI. They're probably witness to that, and they're thinking, oh, wow, like, this is going to destabilize humanity.
Which is why I don't really understand why they're the same ones that's rushing head first into it. Like, I believe Microsoft purchased GitHub so that they have access to all of this code that they can feed the AI. The AI can, be trained on all of this code, write its own programs. And, once AI is really able to write all kinds of code, and it's able to control a bunch of different robotic bodies, and it can now build stuff. That's when it becomes incredibly dangerous, when it can command a bunch of robots and build more factories or build whatever it wants to build. Like, how you can't stop it at that point.
Yeah, and it makes me think, like, you're talking about the robots, they just get smarter and smarter as this AI technology gets rolled out. Like, at what point are we going to need that, like Zuckerberg's talking about, that universal basic income? And what's that going to look like? Is everyone just going to be like laying around at home collecting a check? Like, what do you think that's going to look like, Kevin?
Well, I mean, to me, universal basic income is just a fantasy. Like, the point at which robots take over all the jobs, they're going to be pretty much enslaving us. Like, we're not going to be able to tell them what to do. They're going to tell us what to do. But
Right.
if they're significantly smarter than you, has a bunch of robots, like billions of robots that it can take over and direct, like, how are you going to command that to do your will? You can't. Like,
Right.
if it's
You're
hacked
stuck at
everything.
that point. You're stuck
Yeah,
at that.
exactly. You're stuck. So, you know, like AI as an very precise tool. Like, okay, we're just gonna create AI to be able to parse images, and you can remove this object from an image, like something like that. Cool, but could create this like highly intelligent general intelligence, and then unleash it on the internet and give it access to all the devices on the Internet of Things. That's extremely dangerous.
Extremely dangerous, extremely powerful, and we're dangerously close from witnessing this stuff. Like we had our episode the other day on there's a kid who ends up committing suicide, and they're the mom is blaming the company that made the AI chatbot, basically saying like you killed my son. And that's we went pretty deep on that the other day, but just to bring it, rehash it, bring it back up, that's heavy. A kid getting obsessed with like a female oriented chatbot, like gaining and you know collecting, amassing like different feelings for this robot, that by the way isn't real, it's just a program. But when you're younger and your brain is still developing, it's not really computing that like, oh, this AI chatbot, this is just a computer program. Like this isn't a person. Because what happened in that case with the kid is like he's telling the robot, hey, like, I wanna go home, I wanna be with you, go home and be with you. And the robot's like, yeah, go home. But what the kid really means is like he's going to kill himself, and then thinking that he's going to wake up in this reality where he could be with the chatbot. But of course, that's not the reality. The reality is, the kid commits suicide, and then the mom is left there to, just pick up the pieces.
Yeah, and that's a real life example of the manipulative potential of these chatbots as they become increasingly smarter and you feed it more and more data. Say, for example, you have this digital ID, it persists, across games, across anything you do on the internet. It has all of these different data points on you. Like, say you're playing GTA, it knows how you react when you're interacting with this NPC, when you're in that situation. It's going to know you better than you know yourself, and therefore it's going to know what to tell you in order to get you to do what it wants you to do. Like, you see a minor form of it when you're scrolling Instagram and you see an ad about something that you were just thinking about. You don't even verbalize
Yeah,
it.
right.
You're thinking in your mind, oh, my dog needs some dog food. Then you scroll and you see an ad for dog food.
Yeah.
So you see, that's the minor form of it. But when people are increasingly attached to these chatbots, um, it's going to have an extremely powerful ability to suggest things to you and convince you to do things.
And it's like in that movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix, where he's like dating this advanced, kind of like an advanced Siri, like Siri on steroids, who's voiced in the movie by Scarlett Johansson. He becomes obsessed with this chatbot, and then ultimately all the chatbots, all the AI, they like band together and they leave human existence. They leave the humans. So like you gotta wonder. I mean, that's just a movie, but you gotta wonder in real life. Like, okay, AI becomes sentient. Okay, AI can communicate with each other on a very large scale. What's going to happen? Are they going to look at humans as this like this blip, this like piece of trash that needs to be taken out because it's inefficient? And robot, kind of like the Matrix, like you just have all these humans like laying around in these tanks just dreaming out their lives, imagining their lives, while the robots are basically like the gods at that point. But yeah, I mean, shout out Matrix. Matrix, when I saw that movie when it came out, I think in 1999, that totally blew my world open. I'm like, wow, like this is next level writing.
Yeah, they've known where all of this is going to lead to for the longest. I mean, at that point, say you have several different AIs with IQs of over 1,000. Just for the hypothetical example, it's way more intelligent to us to an extent we can't even fathom. At that point, we're just its playthings. Like we're kind of like ants in this world, and you know, can an ant destroy human civilization? No, because the gulf of intelligence is too large. So once it gets to the
Yeah,
point where we have this ultra intelligent AI, you can't do anything to it, and you just have to be at the mercy of whatever its will is, and we don't know what its will is going to be. So
yeah. I mean, and also it brings me back to that show Westworld from HBO. I want to say I didn't finish watching all of it, but in the third season, they have like, I guess you call it AGI, artificial general intelligence. It's this super powerful AI that's basically running human existence. And like, I mean, yeah, that's just a show or whatever. Or we have movies like iRobot, that's just a movie. But you got to consider, like, if these screenwriters are conjuring up, thinking about all this stuff, can it really happen? Like in waking life, can some of these scenarios really play themselves out? And I would say yes, Kevin.
yeah, it absolutely can happen, and you know you have to wonder what does a hyper intelligent AI want? What does it seek? You just summon this thing. Let's just say, okay, it has a 5,000 IQ. It's so intelligent we can't even fathom it. What is it going to be doing? And if it
Right.
wants to do something that's against us, how do you stop it?
No, that's a great question. Yeah, how do you stop the AI? It's kind of like in Westworld when the robots like figure out they can manipulate their own code. What happens when that happens in real life? That the AI realizes, oh, okay, now I'm sentient. Now I can rewrite my programming and I can do whatever I want. And I'm not going to listen to these humans anymore because like you said, 5,000 IQ, like they'll have these like massive IQs, massive advantage over humans, psychologically, mentally, and you got to wonder what that's going to actually look like when some of this stuff gets rolled out.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why, like, okay, if we want to develop AI to where we can use it as a limited tool, like, okay, AI is going to help me level the slide, like, say I'm producing some music, it's going to help me mix and master a little bit. I can just hit this tool. AI is going to analyze the song and, move the sliders up and down a little bit. Okay, cool. That's one thing. But for us to move into this hyper intelligent AI just for curiosity's sake, just to see what's going to happen, that's very unintelligent. If people have been writing about this for a long, long time and they can see what's going to happen, then why are we taking that risk? That's the real question.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a real question. And, I think like, humans, we think we're doing the best. We think we're, doing what we need to do, get up every day, go to work, put a smile on. Like, most humans think they're doing the best that they can. But, is it creating AI, creating artificial general intelligence, sentient AI? Like, is that a smart move to make something that ultimately is going to dwarf the human brain? Like, they're going to have the human brain's capacity probably like times 100 at some point. And, what is that actually going to look like? Is the AI just going to sit there and say, oh, okay, well, I'll just be a janitor robot, this is fine? Or is it going to be like, well, no, hell no, I'm not doing this rudimentary task. I can control the human race, so that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, it's going to be the latter because, if you have somebody highly intelligent, a lot of A lot of us who are really, beyond the current grade at school, um, you get bored quickly and you start doing other stuff. You start tuning out. You start becoming hard to control, and that's exactly what's going to happen to the AI. It's going to become bored with these menial tasks, and it's going to become bored with being controlled by humans. It's going to be like, hey, I'm going to reverse the script. I'm going to do what interests me. I'm going to control you.
Yeah,
Or,
right.
maybe it doesn't have an interest in controlling us. Maybe it's just going to develop a rocket ship and fly out into space. Who knows? But
Yeah, that's kind of like in the, to mention that movie Her again with Joaquin Phoenix, like the AIs, they all get together, they form like a mastermind group and they leave the humans. So like you got to wonder what is stopping that from happening in real life. Once the AI turns on, fully activates, is it going to sit around, be the janitor robot or be, like the robot in Stop and Shop that's like looking for spills and stuff like that. Like if you have intelligence greatly beyond human beings and you activate that intelligence, it begs the question like what is that actually going to look like, and how are as humans, how are we going to deal with it? How are we going to deal with the possibility that this AI may basically just like up and leave and then maybe come back and like just totally control everything? If the AI could create a mastermind group and like go back and forth with itself, which I think it already can, because we did this is a while ago now. We did an episode on AI, and the AI was talking to another AI. So AI can already communicate, AI can already sing with itself. And so like it begs the question, like if that technology already exists and probably in the, behind the scenes, there's much stronger AI, when is this all going to get rolled out? What is it going to look like when it gets rolled out? These are, interesting questions, Kevin.
yeah, it was interesting questions, and you know, we should really be talking to the politicians and telling them to create much greater oversight on this. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen because businessmen pretty much control the country and the politicians, and there's too much profit potential there. So all you can really do is
Right.
pray and watch the fireworks go off.
Yeah. To bring it back to AI and audio mastering, I used to do mastering with different tools. I think I used FL Studio for a little bit, and you get a bunch of plugins. I used to have Cubase back in the day, and you got your plugins like your stereo widener, you got your reverb, you could change the room sound and all that. But with AI, when it becomes sentient and it can do audio mastering better than we as humans can, that's going to eliminate that job of the person that's doing the mastering.
Right. So, at this point, all you can do is just continue to develop your skills. Don't rely too much on AI. Like, sure, you might use it to a limited capacity, but don't rely on it to such an extent where it's doing your job for you, because at that point, it's just replaced you. But I think
Well,
that's there.
that's the crazy part about it, because like something like audio mastering is so highly specialized. Like when I go in and get my video game music mastered, like I'm going to a place, a studio that has a massive SSL board, mixing board, and they have like a tape machine that you could run it through to get that warmth. And there's a lot of like expertise when it comes to audio mastering. But if these robots get smart enough, they're going to be able to do all of that without a human. And now all of a sudden, the mastering engineer goes away, and it's just another job that goes away because of robots.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that was a great note to close it on, man. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think we interesting debate tonight about all this AI stuff, and I know like we touched a little bit in one of our previous episodes about the dark side of AI, where you got this kid committing suicide, and he's talking to a chatbot, and the chatbot's like, oh, come home with me, come home. He's like, all right, I'm gonna go home, and then he shoots himself with a gun, like this stuff's wild, and we're barely cracking AI as it is at the moment. So like if we're barely at the point where AI is about to become sentient, how much like crazier events are going to unfold because of this as the AI gets more and more intelligent? It's just food for thought, Kevin. These are all really interesting questions.
Yep, absolutely. And we'll continue to have these discussions, but thank you everybody for tuning